When you are creating in Inkscape, it won't be long before you're trying to create some kind of metal surface. And by that I mean something that's quite reflective, like gold, silver or chrome. Well, in today's video, I'm going to give you a simple way of creating that effect for yourself. Hello my friends, Rob here from Button Press Graphics, back with another Inkscape tutorial, and today I'm going to be showing you how you can create these lovely images. Things like gold, silver, chrome or any kind of reflective metal. So without further ado, let's get started. Now as you can see on screen, I have the color codes for 5 different colors and their variations for each metal. In this case I have got gold and silver. Gold and silver will tend to be the most common ones. Now when it comes to chrome or aluminium or anything along those lines, then they have very little in the way of saturation on color. If anything, they just reflect the surroundings back at you. So because of that, most of it will be greys, blacks and whites. Now of course I am going to leave this image in the community tab of the channel, so if you want to download it for yourself and keep it alongside your project as a reference, you can do, and that way you can follow all of the different codes. Now if you don't know how to use these codes for each color, I will show you right now. You can either go to your right hand toolbar and open up the fill and stroke menu with this button right here, or you can simply double click on the fill or stroke boxes down at the bottom right here and it will open it up. Now when you have opened it up, you will find that when you select a fill color, let's see about this one, we have selected this color on the canvas, and within the fill and stroke box menu, you will have this RGBA right here. That is the code. And as you can see, this code is exactly the same as this one because we have this color selected. And as I change, you will see that the code will also change alongside it. This means that no matter what color mode you have on, whether you are using HSL, HSV, RGB, CMYK, etc., the code is always going to work and bring you to the exact color that I am using right here. Now, as you can see, I have just moved off this image to one side so I can still have access to all of these colors. The method that I'm going to be showing you today will work with whatever shape or text or anything that you want. If you can put a gradient onto it, then you will be able to use this method. Now when it comes to actually creating this effect, there is a few other things that you can do at the end to sort of make it pop a little bit more, but we'll get to that very soon. When you have the colors that you need, or you just copied these, if you want to change it to a different style, so a bronze would be more orange than yellow, then you can simply come to this, go over to your hue, and where it says 40, if I was to lower these values, I would lower them by about 10 or 20 to around here. As you can see, it has now significantly changed the hue to a more light orange than a yellow. And you just go down throughout all of these, but of course these two here are slightly lower than the rest anyway. And with these two, you will just knock off the same amount each time. If I was to go to this one, I would make 40 into 20. I would go to this one, make 35 into 15, and again 35 into 15. You get the general idea. But for now I'm going to replace that back to where it was, which was 40. And that's how you will change the metals to whatever shade that you want. So now we have these 5 colors for gold, for example. Let's go with that one. I'm just going to write some text, and it's going to be the word gold. So I'm going to get my text tool from the left hand side toolbar and type out the word gold. Now of course that's too small, so I am going to go to my select tool and I am going to increase the size, and I'm going to also hold shift and control so I can make sure I keep the same proportions as I scale it up. And just like that, we now have the text that we need, but I want to make this a lot thicker as well. So I'm going to go back to my text editor tool. Now I am using my personal favorite to use, which is the Play font, and we have Play regular and Play bold. I'm going to use bold for this one, and of course, as you can see, it is now a lot thicker. Now that we have that done, I am going to use my fill and stroke menu, and we are going to add a simple linear gradient. Now that is found right here. It's the second icon along. I'm going to give that a click, and it is going to show you a gradient going from left to right by default. So what we're going to do is we're going to select this one, which is completely transparent, and we're going to go to the alpha bar and turn it all the way up. And just as a reminder, I am using the HSV selection. Now that we have that done, we need to add some more nodes. Now this bar going across the top is your gradient bar. This is what's going to start on the left, and this one is going to be what it ends on the right. And these represent these 2 nodes on either side of this blue line. Now of course we have 5 different colors, so we need to add 3 more nodes. You can simply do that by going to the bar, and when the plus icon appears, as you can see when I highlight over it, that means you can plus another node. So I'm going to double click and just create 3 more nodes. And just like that, we now have our gradient. Now of course these are not all the colors that we want them to be. So what we're going to do is we're going to select the first one, and then we are going to scroll down to the bottom, these little icons at the bottom. Now this little dropper tool is the tool that we're going to need. So with this selected, as signified by the little circle inside it, we're going to use this dropper and then come to our pickers here, because all this is going to do, as you can see as I highlight over them, is it's going to choose the color that it is, it's going to choose the color that it's highlighting, just like so. And we're going to go down them in a list. So we're going to pick this one, and then we're going to select the next color along, and we're going to repeat it going down each time. And there you go, just like that, we now have our gradient, but it doesn't look quite like gold yet. Well, this is where we would take this slider, or we can just simply use this button to rotate it into the position that we want. Now, as you can see, I've got mine going vertically down, and I'm just going to click and drag this end point so it is at the top of the text, and drag the bottom point so it's at the bottom of the text. And now we get this kind of effect. But what I want to do is I want to make this brown section here, the middle node, be a little bit higher up. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to click and drag that along on the bar. It has a much more harsh gradient right here. So you can move around all of these different colors to get the exact kind of look that you want. And I think that something along those lines always looks pretty good. And already you can see the difference it has made. Now, of course, you can play around with this for a long time, getting them looking exactly as you want. And you could add more nodes in if you wished, just like this. And of course, creating more of a gradient. But for what we need right now, we do not need it. So if you don't want any of these nodes, just simply click it and then hit the delete button. Now, when it comes to creating something along these lines, you can go one step further. You can create a stroke around the outside, which just gives it that little bit more depth, like it's almost 3D and coming out at you. Now, in order to do this, you can just add a stroke onto this text object right here. But for me, I'm going to duplicate this one and add a stroke to the duplicate. This just gives me a little bit more freedom when it comes to editing it later down the line. So I'm going to right click and select duplicate. But alternatively, you can simply hold Ctrl and press D. And now, as you can see, we have two objects. Now I'm going to turn off the fill for that second object, and I'm going to add a blue stroke by holding Shift and selecting the blue swatch, just like that. And now, as you can see, we have our blue outline for the word. Now, before I go any further, I am also going to drop this to the bottom by using these buttons at the top. Lower selection to the bottom. And now I'm going to go to my stroke style and I'm going to increase it a little bit at a time to try and get the thickness that I want. And I think for me personally, around 15 pixels is perfect. I'm going to keep it exactly like that. I'm also going to round the cap and the join just so it doesn't look too harsh around these corners. Now with that done, we are going to go back to our fill and stroke menu and we're going to select the stroke paint, which is this one right here. And as you can see, it's already set to blue because that's what we selected earlier on. However, now we are going to go back to our linear gradient. Now, of course, it is blue and we do not want that color. But if we come up to this gradient menu here, and give it a select, you will see that we have all of these options. Now, this option right here, that is from this picture across here. And we have the gradient for the background of this picture. And the second one is from the stroke around this box. And again, the same with this one as well. Now, when you select yours, you will likely only have one gradient that looks like this. This is the one I've just created, the one at the top, which is this gold text. Now, I'm going to use that one again. But as you can see, it is still going from left to right. So I need to change this again. Now, instead of bringing the square node at the end to the top and the circle to the bottom, I'm going to reverse it and I'm going to leave the circle at the top and of course the square at the bottom. So now we have that nice little offset, just like so. Now, finally, there's a couple more things that you can do to just elevate it even more if you so wish. Now I'm going to show you exactly what I mean. It's by doing something that you've seen me do on the channel previously. What we are going to do now is we are going to take the text in the middle and we are going to duplicate it. So I'm right clicking, pressing duplicate, and now I am also going to change the color to white. And you will get something that looks a little bit like this. And now please remember, you can do this with any of the gradients that you've seen in today's video or create your own. But we now have our white text over the top. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create another shape just so I can give you a rough estimate of the things that you can do with it. Now with this, I'm going to use my pen tool, and I'm going to simply have a curve going up towards this end like a reflection. So I'm going to start around here. I'm going to zoom out a little bit so I've got more room. And then from around here, I'm just going to bend it slightly like so. And then I'm going to come around the bottom and join up. And now we have our shape. And of course, this is where you can use your node tool and get the shape to exactly where you want it. I don't want it just cutting off this slight bit of the G here. I want it to be going across it like so. But I can also make it so it has more of a swerve coming down and up like so. And I like that quite a lot. So I'm going to use that part just as it is. Now what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to select the gold text, the white one that we have layered over the top, and I'm going to also hold shift and select the shape that we have just created. And then I'm going to go to path, difference, and we will be left with a shape that looks something like this. But of course, with your design, it will be whatever shape that you have chosen. And now with that shape, I am going to go back to my fill and stroke menu, click my fill tab, and then add another gradient. But this time we are just going to leave it as white. Now with the gradient on this one, I am going to take this square down to around here. And I'm going to have this gradient coming at an angle. So I'm not going to have it going vertically up like this. I want to leave it as a very slight angle, something along those lines. And of course, if you find that snapping is turned on and it's getting in the way like mine is, then you can always turn off the snapping and then carry on until you get the look that you're wanting. And just having that little bit of a deviation in the gradient can help you to elevate your design. Now what I'm going to also do is select the gold behind it. Now as you can see, this seems to be just one select color underneath. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to move these around to get more of a gradient near the bottom. And of course I can select this one and bring that down slightly as well. And finally, what I want to do next is to add a little bit of a shine. Now what I mean by this is by going to our polygons tool, which can be found right here on the left hand toolbar. I'm going to go to my star polygon, and where it says corners, I'm going to reduce that to 4. And then I'm going to create a star. Now as you can see, mine was more of a square than a star, but I'm just going to take this middle node here, bring that in, and then I'm going to turn off the stroke that is already there and turn the opacity all the way up so I can see it a lot easier. Now obviously white on a white background doesn't really work, so I'm going to just change it to black just for the time being. And now that we have something that looks a little bit like this, I'm just going to place a couple of them on top where this line is. Now with that done, click it a second time to get the rotation handles up. And I'm just going to slightly rotate this, make it look more like an X than a plus. And then I'm going to select them both, turn them white, and I'm going to add a blur. And we are going to reduce the opacity slightly as well. So as you can see, it is simply just adding that little bit of an effect over the top. And I think I'm going to make this one a little bit smaller too, like so. And then one final step, just to help it to stand out even more, is by adding a shadow behind it as well. So in order to do that, I'm going to grab the main shape again. I'm going to right click, duplicate, and then I'm going to make this black, add a black stroke on top. And now we are just going to use the arrow keys, or you can click and drag very simply, just like this. And we're going to move it down and to the right ever so slightly. Something around there looks good to me. And then we can drop it down to the bottom. And of course you can just see the blackness around the edges. And what I'm going to do with this is just add a very slight blur. And of course you can drop the opacity and then play around with this until you get the look that you're after. Something like that always looks pretty good to me. And there you go, you have created that gold or metallic effect. And of course this works with any shapes that you can add a linear gradient on. So have a play around with it and then let me know what you think. Did you know that you can become a member of the Button Press Graphics YouTube channel? Well, now you do. You will get a lot of added benefits and you will directly support the channel, enabling me to make much better content in the future. Also, you can send in your artwork into the creative corner. This is a regular section where I will showcase your work in a future video. But for now, thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. I'm going to bid you all a fond farewell and I will see you next time.